and entrepreneurs.
We've raised the bar.
Learn firsthand from successful business owners and create your own path to success.
I'm going to show you how great I am.
It's time to hit the road to growth with team lead of the Enriquez Group, Realtor Vinny.
Hi, Realtor Growth listeners. Today I have Jerry Fu. So I've had a lot of coaches on here, a lot of coaches. I mean, I might have to change the name of this podcast to Road to Becoming a Coach. All right. But this is the first time I've had a conflict resolution coach. So this is something totally new, trying to dive deeper into kind of precisely what it is. And it sounds like it's when you have a issue that happens, some kind of conflict that's happening, Jerry comes in and kind of walks you through kind of a roadmap to kind of get through that conflict.
Yeah,
right?
that's a great description. That's exactly it.
All right, perfect. Yeah. I mean, there's now we're going to get into the company and how you got into it. I'm just really curious about, did you grow up with other siblings?
I did.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Because I mean, I can only imagine if you were maybe the smaller one or the middle one, and there's a lot of stuff fighting going on, and you had to have conflict resolution at that time. Is this where the path kind of came from, or is that totally different?
No, that's a good question. I mean, there is always going to be some level of sibling conflict, I think, especially growing up. Just, people want their way, and if they're in the way, and then even when you get along and you start roughhousing a little bit, right? Like, and then all of a sudden things just start to escalate. Then you recognize, this devolved into something terrible. Like we were having fun, and all of a sudden tempers flared, and now we're fighting. And so, one of the tenets I used early on was I realized, especially if you've been in customer service, right, that usually the best way to win an argument is to diffuse it. But the bigger picture of conflict resolution, I guess, and the framework that I've kind of developed on my own is just coming from a culture that is very conflict averse, right? On top of the fact that I'm a minority and, the son of immigrants, and, they're just saying, hey, we just want to keep our heads down and, make a lot of money and earn some respect, but we don't want to tread on anybody. We just want to, kind of do our own thing. That's going to be enough, even when, there's discrimination, there's racism, there's, all these other things that aren't okay. But since we are simply just trying to mind our own business, we're just like, it's just not worth the effort to get our hands dirty or get involved in this fight. Right. Until I got into some leadership positions and I saw things that were not okay. Whether people are underperforming or they're, doing things that are disrupting team unity, or just, basically people not pulling their weight. And you realize very quickly that avoidance doesn't work if you want to be in leadership, which is really, a key trait of anybody who's successful in life is at some point, you rarely meet people that are successful in life that aren't respected on some way as a leader.
That are not respected or are respected? Or...
Yeah, or that they all I'm saying is like, CEOs, right? Like most people that we know of are successful usually have leadership as a key trait in their success, right? Because at some point, they had to build relationships well, right? And so like if they're not leading well, because so much of success involves a team effort, right? Like if you're trying to go by yourself, there's only so far you can go, right? The African proverb says, hey, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, you got to go together. And, a lot of that comes from, hey, like, okay, I'm if I'm starting my, entrepreneurial journey and I figure out what I'm good at, but there's all these other tasks that I need to get done, like, file taxes or, check with legal compliance or, operations, things like that, or, generating new business streams. You only have so much time in a day. You only have so much energy, right, to devote to these things. And so, at some point you will have to bring someone on, right? There are some automated tools that kind of you can outsource to if you're good with that. And, that also helps, compensate for the lack of a good teammate. But generally, the people that I know that are successful usually have, a couple people working behind the scenes, helping them elevate their platform, right? So, yeah.
You talked about that your parents were immigrants. Where did they immigrate from?
Taiwan.
And how old were they when they came over?
They were probably in their mid-20s. They came over here for grad school. And then so I was born shortly after they like finished their degrees. And so yeah.
How often, and I know you said that, I mean, being that they were immigrants and they're over here, put their head down, kind of go forward. How often did they kind of remind you of where they came from compared to how well, I guess, here or everything about it? Like, yeah.
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, what's interesting, they joke, like you've heard jokes maybe like us on Minhaj would talk about like immigrant secrets, things like that, right? There's this idea in that conflict aversion that you just don't want to look incompetent. You don't want to admit that you've had struggles or failures because you're afraid that those struggles or failures would make you look, it would damage your reputation, when the opposite is true, right? When you do everything you can to avoid failure, and then when it actually happens, it's just like this force-feeding cycle, right? And so the irony is that when you are not willing to be vulnerable, and people can't see that you are actually human and with flaws, like they can't empathize with you. And empathy has been a key quality more than ever in building good relationships and actually showing that you have a level of integrity where people will actually respect you.
So was that something that they had to learn over time, or is that something that you just learned separate from what their teachings were?
This was separate, definitely, because for them, so much of the Asian mentality, at least from my own background, so much of it is any mess that you have in house, you keep in house, right? You clean everything up. You don't want to distract guests with any domestic issues that we're dealing with, because there's some things that you don't need to like volunteer all the dirty laundry and all the things that are causing problems, right? But the bigger problem is just when you try to look like everything's okay when there are problems that you need to deal with and they aren't. Like, I'll give an example, like the job I got fired from, when I realized that I was not meeting expectations before my bosses found out about it. I just wanted to just hide it and just say, no, things are fine. And then I'm secretly just being like, well, if I admit that I'm not meeting expectations, what's going to happen to me? But then, when I didn't figure out how to reverse that trend, because I didn't ask my boss for help and just trying to redraw strategy, eventually they found out how big a cavity I kind of, drilled for myself. And now it's like, now I definitely have to go. Right. And so the irony is that, when your goal is simply not to look like incompetent, is, then how do you expect anyone to trust you? Because they haven't seen any kind of growth. You haven't given them any kind of sample size to show, hey, yeah, everyone has failure. Everyone deals with rejection. So is that enough to stop you? Or are you actually going to learn from these things and then tailor your approach in such a way where you actually experience long-term success? Like, failure is a prerequisite for success, long-term success anyway.
So in essence, the idea is, if you're an employee or you're someone kind of working for someone else, show the small mistake before it becomes a huge mistake, roughly.
Yeah, that's one thing. Like, show the effort that you're saying, hey, this is, like, if I had to do that all over again, right? I would, go to my boss with the first draft, and say, hey, this is what I've come up with based on our discussion. And then, she could give me feedback and say, well, I like this, I don't like that. Go ahead and change it, right? One mistake I made, a quick example was just, at one point I drafted something. My boss showed me what she had come up with on her own, and I saw mine, and I said, oh my gosh, this is nothing like what she wanted. I'm just going to use hers. And then I just deleted mine because I just didn't want her to see that, oh wow, Jerry's work is just completely off. But what was worse was, because I deleted it, I had no documentation to show that it was even working. And she goes, oh, did you even do anything? I'm just like, I did, but I deleted it. And she's just like, okay, maybe. Right. And so I was just so afraid of being embarrassed by work that that she would be upset with, but she was more upset with the fact that I was trying to hide it, then she concluded that I didn't even do it. And so, that's just a terrible path to take, right? Because now I'm up the creek without a paddle, because now I can't bring back that work, right? At least have something to show, hey, this is my effort. Okay, it didn't align well. Okay, let me go back and, wash this out, try it again. And then that way she can at least show that I'm trying, boss. Like, I'm getting there. Right.
Well, so you got fired from that company. Did you go to another paycheck company, another corporation, or where'd you go next?
This is where the roller coaster gets fun. Yeah, so that job. Basically, a bit to unpack my career path a bit. I was in chain pharmacy for 5 years at the behest of my risk-averse mother. Said, hey, I don't want you to deal with the struggles your dad did, trying to find gainful work with 2 master's degrees, one in chemical engineering, one in computer science. Like, smart guy, but for some reason, just really struggled to find a company that would trust him long term. And so after I'd had enough of the corporate puppetry that I ultimately was subjected to working for this company, I said, well, I want to teach students, but I don't know how I'm going to without a PhD or a residency. And so, my friend helped get my hat in the ring to apply for this teaching job through a consulting company. And, initially when I went there, I thought this was great. I thought this would be the last company I ever work for. 11 months later, I get fired because, I just wasn't serious about doing the work, which is what the company pays you to do, right? It's like, no, boss, here's another story as to why I didn't get the job done. That got old real quick, And so anyway, all that to say, the next company I ended up at was a House of Cards. 4 of my paychecks bounced while I was filling scripts for crooked doctors. And I had this very misguided view of grace. And also because I was conflict averse, right? I didn't want to confront my boss for writing me bad checks. I'm just like, well, let me do my job, even if he doesn't do his. And everyone else is telling me, Jerry, you can't pay your bills, like leave, right? But I was like, I don't know. And then, what do you do with that? Right. So thankfully, again, went back into the network. My friends got me out of that job, got me on another one that I liked, but they couldn't pay me more than 8 hours a week. And I said, okay, now what do I do? So this was in Houston at the time. And they said, well, you can get more hours for us if you work out in Austin at our location out there. I said, okay, beggars can't be choosers. I'm going to Austin. I have no idea what my life is going to look like. I get tapped to help teach some leadership workshops through a pharmacy nonprofit some other friends run. And that's when it started to click, where I said, okay, I need to get better at leadership. And now I believe I can actually become better at leadership, because before I just said, leadership is hard. I don't want to look incompetent. I'm just going to avoid it. It's just not worth the headaches for whatever extra money that they're going to give me. But now I realize it's essential to save my career. If I'm going to actually find more gainful work, I need to improve my leadership skills. So still kind of that out of the frying pan into the fire. I had the opportunity to take on a full-time manager position with that company in Houston, position to open back up. And, I moved back ready to take on this challenge, and I proceed to get written up because I am not addressing my technicians properly whenever they were not pulling their weight. And so, again, just try, struggle, fail. I get out of the doghouse, but, still the company had their funding pulled. And so now the only reason I'm even getting any attention from companies is that I have leadership experience on my resume. What I say is that these jobs are like icebergs in that they're nice, but they only last like a year or two because of just competitive landscape. And so when my previous job went under, I said, well, I'm tired of chasing scripts. I'm tired of fighting insurance contracts. But I love coaching. I love teaching people how to be more effective leaders and handling challenges that come their way as leaders. What would a career in coaching, leadership coaching look like? And so, still, again, afraid of rejection, afraid of failure. And, eventually when COVID hit, I said, okay, how much longer can I really afford to put this off? Right. So last year, I filed the LLC, opened up the bank account. And, I still have a day job as a pharmacist, trying to make that work as best I can while I build my side business. And,
Well, now, it seems, at least with the roller coaster of your jobs, right? Conflict has been one of the big keys of you getting fired, either steering away from the conflict in front of you, but I think mostly steering away from it. With a background like yours, where you've walked away from a lot of the conflict, right? Why would you start a company in conflict resolution?
No, that's a great question. What a common phrase, right, is that at least the one I use is sometimes your greatest struggle becomes your greatest fascination, right? And much like leadership, which was a struggle that became a fascination, I started to look a lot closer at how am I even going to get better at this, right? Like, and I've been in plenty of situations off the clock, my personal challenges trying to figure out how do I navigate this. And, it took some help from some friends, from some literature that some friends pointed me toward. And, at some point you just say, okay, I can't afford to tolerate being bad at this anymore. I can't afford to tolerate bad situations anymore. So yeah, let me try, struggle, fail until I get better at this. And so basically I'm at a point where I want to turn around and help people in similar situations that I was 10 years ago, right? To say, hey, you know what, you're going to have to go through this process, but I can make it a lot easier for you. I can help you get to success, a little faster, to the long-term confidence and clarity and closure that you want to experience.
Now, I know there's again, I've had a variety of different coaches on here, and some of them have like platforms they sign up with, and that they're kind of like guidance. They're almost like the mentors to the coach. Do you have a roadmap that you're working with in building your business right now? Are you going through a company, or are you doing it on your own, just kind of reading the books, or how's that process look like?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, it's a combination of networking. There's other coaches in this space that I've gotten to be, friends with, just in local organizations around coaching. There's business books, right? There's that you can read. So I'm very much bootstrapping it right now. I did sink a lot of my own savings to start my company. And I deliberately did that just to force myself to be a little more resourceful. So yeah, it's a combination of books. It's a combination of, networking. It's a combination of just experimenting, right? Because at some point, unless I have the money to get someone to write really nice sales copy for me, I'd rather just do it myself at this point and just realize, hey, I just need to try things out, and it's okay if it doesn't work. I just need to keep trying. So that's been my approach.
What has driven you to take the jump, take the plunge into putting your savings, bootstrapping it, going forward with it? Because there's probably a lot of people that have a dream, have a hope, have something they want to fight for, yet they never take the jump. So what has driven you?
Yeah, great question. Well, for those of you who aren't familiar with the pharmacy landscape, it's become much more saturated in terms of opportunities and applicants and things like that. And for me personally, you realize that stability is a very fleeting thing, because to depend on someone else for your paycheck is pretty dangerous, right? Like all these companies that I work for, they all promise that working for them will fulfill my dream as well. And it, in a way it has, but in a way it hasn't. And so, how much longer did I want to deal with insurance? That's basically the biggest turning point, was I don't want a job that deals with insurance, or on the paying end of it, because for those of you familiar with healthcare, right? Insurances basically dictate how much you're worth, whether they say, hey, we don't like you dispensing that drug, or we're not going to pay you that much to dispense it. Or, they just say, we think your practices are shady, so we're just going to cancel your contract. I just said, I don't want a profession that is dependent on someone else dictating my worth. So as hard and terrifying as it is to be in a field where I still have to, do a better job establishing my worth, I have a better chance because I'm not dealing with insurance companies that have leverage against what I say I'm worth.
I mean, as you're putting all your savings into your business and building out your business, mm-hmm. Have you thought of what your parachute would be as if things went bad, or is it strictly on what's going to go right and not even worrying about what could go wrong?
No, I mean, you have to have a little bit of doubt and pessimism, right? That's just wise, right? You need to say, what could go wrong? Why did it go wrong? And how will I respond to that, right? I mean, doing a premortem is one of the wisest things that any business owner could do, right? Is just to say, yeah, what are my potential barriers? And I'll be happy to admit, I didn't I didn't build a big parachute because I knew if I had too nice a plan B, I would just default to that, right? When people say, "Oh, well, you could just get another pharmacy job," and I'm like, "Nope, nope, 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 don't want to settle for that." I mean, the thing that helped me out, that saved me, or at least stabilized things early on, and guys, this is real time, right? I signed up to do private tutoring as kind of like a stabilizer. It's not a long-term thing. I like doing it. It's not for me, compared to coaching, it isn't necessarily the most satisfying work, but it is work that I do enjoy doing. And so when I know there's a need out there, you're looking for your early adopters. That's what's going to keep you afloat, right? And so, yeah, that's basically been my strategy, is just to say, okay, right, at this stage, how do I build out a system for the things I need to outsource, like marketing and automated email campaigns, things like that. And what do I need to do in the meantime? Okay, I need some cash flow. All right. Can I do that immediately? Like, what are some of the easiest ways to get that off the ground? Are there subscriptions I can sell? Private tutoring. Thankfully, I have a reputation that it can help with that. And then, I need to increase my visibility. So how do I do that? It's like, okay, appearing on podcasts. That's been a lot of fun. I've met a lot of great, motivated podcast hosts in the process, and I plan to do that and keep doing that, just because it's been a lot of fun for me to meet people like you.
What have your parents played in any of this? Man, I've talked to other people that have been in similar situations, maybe a little bit farther along, and they remember the times when they first started getting going, and the people that were closest to them were saying, "Are you really sure about this? Do you really want to go that direction? Do something more stable. This is not there." Like, but yet over time they win them over. Where are you in that process? Have they been very supportive, or are they still kind of trying to give you guidance in another direction?
Oh, they don't like this at all. Like, they're not familiar with it at all. And so they're like, just as, I even had a call. This is, guys, like I said, this is real time. This is really great, because I can just open up my cabinet and show you exactly what I'm dealing with right now. So, I give my parents a weekly update of, just things that I've been up to and things like that. And so I said, hey, I've been doing some private tutoring, and I get a call from my dad, and he's like, are these kids vaccinated? And I'm just like, have you been doing this in person? I'm just like, yeah, I'm doing it in person. I don't know if they're vaccinated. And they're like, why do you need the money? Like, you should just stick with your pharmacy job. You don't need this, and it's a needless health risk. Like, just stop it. Like, why are you doing this with money? It's like, well, Dad, I started my company, and I need some cash flow. A company doing what? It's like, oh, leadership and conflict coaching. Like, oh, what's that? Like, we don't like that. Like, that's just unfamiliar, and, just stick with your pharmacy job. Never mind the fact, Vinny, that, my pharmacy job, and this is, again, real time, I have an insurance company that wants to take that $50,000 in reimbursement money because they felt that we were doing things illegitimately, right? And so, my parents see the stability, and I've been told them all this. And what do I do if I countered that with that? Be like, well, Dad, I don't know how much my pharmacy job is going to last. So, what am I going to bet on? So, and I mean, I'll be happy to tell people that when I was in my 20s, I had no idea what a leadership coach was. I had no idea if it would even be an established practice, or if that was even a real job. And now, right, coaching is more prevalent than ever because of all the stress that people are dealing with, that in COVID and other challenges that have just come up. And so to recognize and respect, what my parents' beliefs are and the context where they developed them, right? Because, like, I saw how hard my parents worked, right, to maintain, provision for us. So trust me when I say that I am grateful for everything that they do and everything that they sacrificed and invested in me, so I could get to a point where I could, stand on my own 2 feet. And at the same time, their definition of success is what was true for them 20 years ago. And to think that it's going to still be true is you can hang on to that, but how's that working for you, right? For them, success is grandkids, which I don't have. I haven't given them any. So, we'll see if that happens. But success for me now, right? I want a passive income stream, and I want to be able to help people in the process. I don't want that money for me. It's just to free up my time so I can really spend time and energy on investing in people and activities that are meaningful to me, and not just to me for just to feel good about myself, but I know it's going to make this world a better place, right? As cheesy as that sounds. What kind of Jerry does this world want to see, right? The one that's scared to try new things and just stick with this like quote unquote stable pharmacy job and just kind of enjoy his life on the weekends? Or do they want a Jerry that's really, going to go after, the things that are meaningful to him, and in the process inspire some people to come alongside him?
Well, let's say we're talking in five years. We're not talking to Jerry in 5 years.
Yeah.
Where's that Jerry going to be? Where is the conflict resolution coach going to be? Where are you going to be?
Yeah, great question. I need to think about this more, really. If I do everything I need to do in 5 years, ideally, I have a fully operational coaching company. I'm able to, have e-courses where people can, access my material, at a minimal or reduced cost just because they can't talk to me in person or they can't afford it, and yeah, I'm able to really focus on traveling to, third world countries and really helping build up their infrastructure for dealing with their inherent problems. And yeah, that's where I want to be, where I'm able to, train up more coaches to do the work that I'm starting off doing right now, automating what I can, and then just freeing up my time to invest in, sharing my life with a great woman, and then seeing more of what this world has to offer.
I'll finish it with this question: is there a rough blueprint of the best way? And I know there's probably multiple ways of dealing with conflict. Mm-hmm. And is there a blueprint of how to structure, assess, dissect, or something like that? Is there anything like that you could offer?
Of course. So I'll take a couple things just to kind of throw them in the pot, see how people respond to it. So 2 of the source material books that I kind of helped color my approach to conflict resolution. One is called Difficult Conversations. Just type it into Amazon, it'll come right up. The other is called The 4 Conversations. And it's by a management consulting couple named Jeff and Lori Ford. And one of those conversations is called the closure conversation. So whenever expectations are broken in an organization and there's conflict, they give tips on how to handle that conversation. And so my own framework kind of takes from these recipes. I throw in a couple of my own spices, right? Because you got to have cayenne pepper because you need a little kick to it, right? I have a framework available for download actually on my website, adaptingleaders.com. It's a free PDF. Just check it out. And I can go over the 5 steps right now just so that people have an idea of what we're dealing with. 5 steps. Number 1, you have to picture what success looks like. What does a successful conversation sound like? How do you think that would go, right? And success doesn't necessarily mean, we can reconcile and restore this to a point where we enjoy being around each other again. Sometimes success means, tying off that knot and just saying, okay, we're done. I still care about you. I still respect you, but we're done. Like at one point I did evict a roommate because he defaulted on his lease. And so a successful conversation was explaining to him why it is in his best interest to leave and move out before I call the cops. Right. The second step is to find 10 seconds of courage, right? You don't need to be Superman or Wonder Woman. You just need to get the ball rolling, because now once you get the ball rolling, backing out is not going to be helpful, right? They're like, oh, sorry, just kidding. I'm not really that upset with you. Sorry. That doesn't work. You just need just enough to, hey, let me send this email. Let me send that text. Let me pick up the phone. And, that's the key, ignition point, right? To start the car. The third step is to script your key phrases. So write out exactly what you want to be sure to address, right? I need to say something about, punctuality. I need to say something about, late rent. I need to say something about the effects that the late rent is having on me and my feelings around that, right? Something like that. And then that way, once you get it out on paper, right, you can kind of play around with those thoughts, organize them a little bit, clean them up, make sure that it doesn't sound overly raw. And then number 4, you want to rehearse them in front of a mirror, role play with your friends, right? Because the more muscle memory you develop, like in the dojo or on the practice field, the more likely you are to actually follow through when you have to say them during game time, right? Because if you don't rehearse these things and you don't kind of figure out, how do I come across? What's my tone? What's my body language? Then you're just going to default to just being scared because you weren't sure about how this is going to go. And then 5, you actually have to do it. Just, you set up the time, you have the script, just trust that, if the right principles are in place, that even if you have to improv a little bit, that you're going to find a way to land the plane in the destination that you planned for it. So those are basically, that's my 5-step take on how to handle difficult conversations.
Yeah, that's great. If someone's listening right now and there's some kind of conflict they've been kind of dealing with kind of over time, what's the best way of them to reach out to you?
Yeah. You can find me on LinkedIn, or you can go directly to my website, www.adaptingleaders.com. Aside from the free PDF, I also have a free blog on interesting and useful literature that will, that should help you out as a leader. If you don't have time to read books, just, let me digest them for you. You can also schedule a complimentary 30-minute call. Just no strings attached. Just, click on the link, Calendly, and let me know what you're working on. Tell me your story, right? Hey, I got a situation. I'd love to, kind of get your thoughts and perspective on how to make sure that this goes well, that I can address everything I need to, and that I can actually feel relieved that I got that over with.
Well, thank you, Jerry, for being here. Hopefully everyone got some great nuggets right there. Please subscribe. Please share. And look in the show notes. You'll find out all Jerry's information. And connect with him on LinkedIn. Tell him your conflict. See if he can help you out. See if he can give you some words of wisdom. And see if you can build a partnership to a better solution.
Absolutely. Whether it's individual or organizational, I'm here for you guys.
Perfect. Thanks, guys. Please subscribe. Please share. And tell your friends.